Welcome back for the second segment, and we're going to talk about team illnesses. And I'll have to admit, this is the first time I've ever run across the term team illnesses. It actually kind of makes sense once you read through it, but when I first started reading the text and thinking about it, I thought, this sounds kind of hokey to me, but at the end of the day, it tends to make sense. Again, you're talking about academics, and some of us that are academics, it's I don't know, we get a little hokey sometimes. So they start out with a couple of definitions, and we've talked about groupthink in some of the other earlier chapters, but they talk about groupthink, and it's when information that would run counter to established ways of thinking and acting in a team and associated minority dissent are essentially shut down by ignoring the majority, or ignored by the majority. And again, we went into groupthink. I can't remember what chapter it was, but we discussed it. And when we discussed it there, it was more along the lines of, we were talking about the interview process. And I think that's the way they were tying it into groupthink. And then the second one, and this is one that run into a lot, even as a consultant. It's, some of these individuals that I'm given on the teams that I'm, bringing together for the short term, I'm not sure who made the decisions to put them on the team, but they're you're talking about dead weight. And they're talking about free riding and social loafing. And it's a phenomenon whereby some members of a team may work less diligently or with less effort toward team goals simply because they realize there are others in the team who will pick up the slack. And that happens a lot. It's happened a lot over my career. You'd have individuals, and my father used to talk about, I grew up on a farm, and my father, we had individuals that worked on the farm, and he would come in for dinner at night, and my mother would say something about how things go today, and he'd say, oh yeah, that bunch today, I had to ride them like a rented mule to get them to work. And that's what you feel like sometimes with these free riders or these social loafing. Again, it's one of those situations that you spend a lot of time as a leader, whether it's a long-term team that you're managing on a day-to-day basis, or it's a specialized team that short-term that you pull together. One of the issues that used to run into, especially at HealthNet, when you had your day-to-day activities, day-to-day teams you were trying to manage, and they, especially medical informatics, medical economics, they were driving a lot of the information that impacted the operations of the company itself. And then you were pulled off, and maybe in another geographic location, pulled off to work on these special projects. It was a strain trying to manage those teams, and you would run into some freeloading and some free riders and social loafing, because kind of this out of sight, out of mind, and they were just you just had to constantly crack that whip and be on top of them. Fortunately, the goals we had set up, as far as how long it took to generate a report and some things like that help mitigate the issues with free rider and social loafing. But it was definitely an issue. And the authors talk about, they say there are systematic maladies or illnesses to which teams are vulnerable. Teams desire to achieve harmony or a lack of conflict. And I think when you form a team, that's what everybody hopes, that there's no conflict. Everybody works together, everybody's on the same page, everybody's pulling in the same direction, putting forth the same amount of effort, because at least when you initially form these teams, everybody wants to, and even with the free rider and the loafing, everybody still wants, at the end of the day, to hit the goal, to achieve whatever goal or whatever vision is set aside for these teams. It's just some people had rather work, well, as they say, a little less diligently. And information or thought processes that run counter to their norms. So that's where you start getting into issues. It's the information and the thought processes that run counter to the norms, either that you have developed for the team or the norms that individuals on the team perceive to be what you as the leader desired or what the team should be focused on moving forward. And group thinks it shuts down counter information. It's just like when we talked about, the group think earlier. You're trying to interview people, and they want to interview people that have the same thought processes they do. They don't want any diversity, or they don't want anybody coming onto the team that thinks in a different light than they do, or a different direction. And you certainly have that when the bulk of the team is the in group, and the leader becomes excessively cohesive. If it is a in group team, they will get cohesive in a hurry. Stops thinking, they stop thinking creatively. They shut down information that runs counter to the established ways of thinking of the group. They have a certain, it's almost like tunnel vision. And they develop this tunnel vision. They're all working together in the same direction. And if you've got anybody on that team, even if they're on the in the in crowd or the in group, if they try to get creative and try to improve the processes to get more efficient, this group think will shut it down in a heartbeat. Normative pressure forces members to go along with the group. Shame on anyone with new information and ideas. You see that a lot, especially in church organizations or religious organizations. Saw it in college, and when we talked about, when I talked earlier about fraternities and sororities, you had a lot of this group think, and when it kind of the Greek system in colleges. Leaders should actively prevent groupthink, even though it is a natural occurrence. And it is a natural occurrence. You put a group of individuals together, and if you've got a couple of strong-willed individuals within that group, or that you're trying to put together to work on something, either a long-term team or a short-run team, they're going to start to influence everybody else on that team. You will see that a lot. It's just a natural occurrence, and sometimes you have to kind of pull them back. You have to calm them down and get them to understand that there's some diverse ideas, and some of these diverse ideas are really good ideas, and they should step back and take a look at those ideas. The leader could delegate actually as a devil's advocate, and I've tried that a couple of times with teams, and it works really well. It's one of those situations where you put somebody on a team that is extremely intelligent, that will speak their mind, and it's kind of like that devil's advocate stirring the pot, and it gets some members riled up, but once they get to that boiling point and you're almost ready to explode, then you can calm them down and get them to step back and think and say, well, so-and-so had an idea, and didn't it work well? Well, yeah, it did work well, but it wasn't what we wanted to do. And I said, but didn't it work well? And didn't it help achieve the goal in a more efficient manner? Well, yeah, it did, but it's not what we thought we should have done. And I said, but again, didn't it work? And so the devil, that devil's advocate, somebody to stir the pot. Again, I've used it on more than one occasion, and knock on wood, it's always worked well for me. And then you've got they talk about the social loafing and the free riding, and work less diligent with less effort, because they know others are going to pick up the slack. It's diffusion of responsibility and accountability issue. These individuals are in there, loafing, free riding, because they know, heck, we're going to hit the goal because so-and-so is a fantastic leader. So-and-so's got the expertise. They have the knowledge. They can, especially if you're on an analytical team, let them write the code. Man, they can write that code, and it's efficient, and we know it's going to do a good job. And we'll just kind of sit back and, kind of ride on their coattails. And And again, you see this a lot in analytical type teams, IT type teams, especially if you've got a project management professional that the company's brought in, or a consultant like me, that I see it a lot, the free rider and the loafing, and in the consulting space, because I've got this group of resources, followers. They're not really followers, because I'm only there for the short term, but they look at me as like, hey, the company brought you in, they paid you to come in and pull this thing together and do the work. And their expectation is, I'm the consultant, I'm the expert. They expect me to do all the work. That's the first thing I tell them. It's not going to work that way. If you don't want to be on the team, then that's fine. I can go back to, the organization's leaders, and I can get somebody to replace you. That's not a problem, but I'm not going to do all the work for you. And you see that a lot again. Consulting, project management, where you've got a project manager. See that a lot when I worked at United. Also saw it a lot when I worked at Blue Cross and Blue Shield. They had internal project managers that were there to kind of herd the cats. They were there to bring everybody together and to ensure that free rider and social loafing wasn't an issue. But at the end of the day, everybody knew that project manager, the ball was in their court, and it was their responsibility. They were accountable to make sure that the project was completed correctly on time. And when you're talking about social loafing and free riding, when not all contributing, performance of a team suffers, and it can suffer, and it's going to depend on the other individuals on the team. If you've got some rock stars and go-getters on the team, they're not going to let the team suffer because of some yahoo wants to be a free rider. They're going to work a little harder than they have to just to make sure the team's successful. And perception of it inequity or injustice occurs and is taken advantage of because of their drive. And so you don't want the perception of inequality, or you don't want the perception of fairness. And it's your job as a leader to go in there and jumpstart these free riders and these social loafers and get them to either produce or we're going to remove them from the team. We'll get somebody else to take their place that wants to be on the team and wants to work. And the leader should recognize the likelihood and monitor it. And it's a lot of times related to that out-group membership that we've talked about in multiple earlier chapters. It's a lot of these free riders or social loafers on their day-to-day teams, on the teams, if they've been pulled into this special team. If you go back and talk to the individuals that manage them on a day-to-day basis, said, yeah, we have a really hard time getting them to work here. So, and then especially a consultant, I'm stepping back and I'm saying, well, why in the world did somebody pick these characters to be on this project that we've got to have done in 30 days? So sometimes you wonder as a consultant, when you go into a business or to another entity and they start pulling these teams together for you, you wonder, what the thought process is that they use to pull individuals on these teams together. And I've on more than one occasion gone back to the individual that's hired me and I said, look, I've got 6 people on the team and 2 of them are just worthless. I need to get them off the team and get 2 more on there. And, they understand that, if these 2 free riders or social loafers are left on the team, the project is not going to be completed in time, and it's not going to be correct, and it's going to fall back on them because they hired me as a consultant. Yes, it'll look bad on me, but it's also going to look bad on them. So they are more than happy to take care of this social loafing and free riding issue. We're going to stop there in chapter 8. And when we come back, we're going to kind of go through some stages of team development. Talk to everybody in a few minutes.